band is this?
Everybody poops sometimes.
Give us this.
Wake up, sweetness.
Your first time should be more than special.
I'm in, Savannah said. Good Lord, Gemma.
When a man and a woman, in this case, really love each other, what happens is they fuck.
Ooh, hello?
Oh, dang it, I lost my fish. This next word almost sounds like Quidditch. Quidditch milade Diana Agosiagath an Fiedian.
As much as I love fucking you, sweetness, we stared into each other's eyes whilst I moaned in ecstasy.
Having consumed half of the bourbon, I keep saying bourbon. You know, every time I mess up on a word, Stunt Mama just shows up.
She had her seductive smile on her lips.
I said we couldn't have sex. I didn't say anything about everything else. Ew. Happy to help.
Biatch, you are the spark of light in the vastness of my night. His note, like a finality to a beautiful, breathtaking song.
Hello. Good evening. I broke my ring finger on my right hand. It's been a week, to say the least. Do I even ask how? I mean, okay. What are we supposed to do with you? I hope there's a cool story behind it. That's all I want to know. Let me scroll back up here. Amlas, dutiful mod. It's great to see you. Princess, I'm so glad you could make it. I appreciate the lurk. And Stump Mama's mama, thank you for being here. As always, dutiful and faithful. I appreciate you. Kay, of course, with a broken finger. And Irish Miner is here as well. Good to see you, sir. How the heck are you? Wait, I'm sorry, I think I'm missing something. You broke your finger because of bubble wrap? Is that accurate? No, okay. Because we asked, how did you break your finger? And then you typed bubble wrap. So, you know, I'm just following the flow of the conversation. But you needed to be wrapped. Yes, that makes sense. Absolutely. Probably with a splint as well. Yes, Stump Mama's mama, I know. Okay, don't... Just leave me alone. Be nice. Be gentle. You asked, what should we do with me? Oh, okay, yes, I guess I did technically ask that question first. So, that's fair. That's fair. I'll give you that one. My throat has been very froggy today. Granted, I've talked a lot today as well, so not helpful when you're reading a book. Said with love and giggles? Okay. The soothing nature of hot tea. I got some packages yesterday and I bobbled them. I don't know what that means. I broke it trying to catch a particularly heavy one. So you fumbled the packages, tried to catch the heavy one. Ouch. Okay. I am sorry. That that must have been a doozy. I hope you got checked out right away and they're taking good care of you. Hi, Phony. How are you? Phony fan in the house. Good to see you. Good to see all of you. Boy. Oh, right. I have an announcement. Very important, especially since I don't have a Discord to announce it in. So please, note this. If there's nothing else that you recall about tonight, let it be this. Starting on Sunday, because, yep, today's Thursday. Starting on Sunday and continuing from there on out, my streams will start 1 hour sooner. I've been getting very tired at night as I stifle a yawn. So my streams will start an hour sooner. Right now they start at 7 Central, or whatever time it is for you. Just go back 1 hour, and that's when I'll start. So, starting on Sunday, that's happening. Okay? Any questions? Any questions from the class? It's just a finger that can't really do anything. It wasn't dislocated or anything, so I just taped it. You didn't even go and check, did you? Okay, if you Googled that and that was your decision, it will heal, but if it heals incorrectly, you'll have a bent finger. Okie doke, but I won't be there Sunday or next Thursday since they'll be on our annual camping trip. Absolutely understandable, and I hope you have a fantastic time without me. It's fine. It's okay. It's cool. Nope, that sounds about right. Yeah, well, that's true. Been there, done that. Okay. Now that was a good story. The best. The absolute best. Moog, you just went live, I thought. What are you doing here already? Didn't you just go live? Like, my apologies then. Well, thanks, Moog. I didn't expect to see you again. I was just happy to stop in and listen to you read while I could. Thank you for bringing your folks over. I appreciate it. We haven't even cracked open our book yet. We're getting ready to. As a mother of soccer players, all they do is either tape it or splint it, which you can do at home. Just ask Stump Mama. I will. Long time no see. I know. How's it been going? Gosh, Moog was just reading a book very gently and calmly to her community. And now they're over here. Star the Wanderer, thank you for the follow. I appreciate you. Once we hit 750 followers, we're going to do a special stream. Which, I don't know why that's not displaying, actually. It's very odd. Anyway, I appreciate you. Oh, there it is. Why is that not showing up on the other page? Huh. Did I get rid of it? Sorry, having a brain fart or something. You know what? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Thank you for that follow. Thank you for coming over in the raid. Kingdom Society is our book and will be our book for quite a while. It's a hefty one, but it's a great story so far. I feel a little bit more with it than I did last time we streamed, so I should be able to read our normal length of time. That's my vision. I realized we had to cut it short last time, so. So my son plays the Once Human game you were talking about. Well, that's cool. I hope he enjoys it. It's a lot of fun, actually. More fun than I thought it would be. For myself, just because I've never really been big into the survival type games like that. So I tried it for some reason or another, and mainly because it was free, but I really liked it. And I'm still playing it. In fact, excuse me, Saturday morning, I've got a time scheduled with some buddies, Stunt Papa and Purple, and we're gonna maybe Red Thorn. I don't know if Red Thorn's coming on or not, actually, but either way, we're gonna jump on and play some Once Human. It's gonna be great. Rexter's here, my man. It's great to see you, sir. I hope you're well. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on chapter 17 tonight. That is our starting point. Page 170 of like 500. What time would you be getting off? So I'll probably still do about a 2-hour stream, which is what we do now. I realize there's wiggle room if I need to go longer, so that's good. You know, if we're partway through a chapter and it's getting close to the end time, I don't have to like rush it or anything. So that's helpful. So I'm looking forward to that. So yes, for those of you that just came in with the raid, if you're planning to join me on a semi-regular basis, or even if you're not, just good information to know. My streams are Sundays and Thursdays. Typically, they've started at 7 o'clock Central. So about 1 hour ago from now, wherever you are in the world. Starting on Sunday, this coming Sunday, I'm pushing back 1 hour. So 6 Central will be my new start time. So there you go. That is my public service announcement. Thank you for listening. We will now enter into the world of Kingdom Society, the Black Hood. Exclamation point, Kingdom. That's a page for our author. This is only book 1 in the series, folks, so if you're enjoying this story, you may want to get the others. With that in mind, sit back, relax, and I will read you a story. Chapter 17, A Horrifying Fate. Merrick blinked his eyes a few times until they adjusted to everything. His comrades looked at him with frightened expressions, huddled close to one another. He didn't understand why. Something within his body was different, and his mind felt foggy. How had he ended up here? Had the fight never happened? Was he losing his mind? He couldn't even remember the last 5 minutes. All he could recall was that he fought Zalron in a battle and won. If I defeated the monster, then why is everyone looking at me like this? As he moved forward a few paces, a sharp pain struck from within his head. It felt like a knife being driven through the back of his eye sockets, and a continuing pulse beat like a drum in his head. He grabbed his face in agony and screamed. Looking forward, barely able to see, he made out the shape of a tall, bulky man with a great halberd coming toward him. After straining his vision, he realized it was Daryl. The man looked angered, as if he'd lost a loved one. "What's going on, friend? Why are you coming at me with your axe?" Daryl pointed to the ground. "Are you serious? Do you not see what you've done?" Merrick looked down and gasped. Arthur, the master-at-arms, was lying dead, his face smashed in and bloody. As he continued scanning, he found George a few yards over with his chest caved in. Merrick trembled as he dropped to his knees. He never remembered killing anyone. He never would have done that to his own comrades. Everything started spinning like drunken vertigo, making him dizzy. The same whispered voices from before started screeching at him. These were not normal voices, but instead something from the pit of hell. Merrick's heart thumped quicker and louder until it screamed again. He wanted it all to stop. The voices turned to chants and started coming from all around him, and finally he stood and shouted, "Go away! Leave me alone!" When he looked forward again, he didn't see Daryl. Instead, he saw Zalran holding Meridian's throat. "Looks like it's over, boy." Merrick tried to speak, but this time nothing came out. He'd get the start of a word out, but it would get swallowed by the ringing in the air, a ringing that was getting louder. All he could hear was the Black Hood's voice. He tried to move his body, but nothing would work. He couldn't even stretch out his arm. Then he watched as Zalran snapped Meridian's neck and dropped her to the ground. It was at that moment Merrick was able to move again. He aimed at Zalran and released an energy whip. A moment later, he had his enemy by the throat. As he squeezed, something strange occurred. The Black Hood's face appeared for a time, but started flickering in and out. Each time it dissipated, Arthur's face would take its place. Merrick didn't know how to tell who it was. But soon enough, he was staring at Arthur, and only Arthur. "What are you doing, Merrick? I'm your friend. You don't have to do this." With his teeth gritted, Merrick tilted his head. Nothing was making sense to him. "You aren't Arthur. I saw his dead body earlier. And that means you are Zalran." "No, it's really me," Arthur said, struggling to get his words out. "Look around you, Merrick. The beast is playing with your mind. No one is dead." Merrick looked to the area where he'd found the dead bodies earlier, but there was nothing there. Nothing but grass and rocks. He wanted to believe the Master-at-Arms, but he'd just watched his wife die and couldn't remember what was real and fake anymore. Just then, Arthur's face faded and Zalran's appeared again, laughing. "Aren't you going to end me? Come on, boy." Merrick gripped hard around the man's throat, but this time he stopped because of his wife's voice. "I knew Vigil." "Wake up, Merrick. Whatever you're seeing isn't real. You need to wake up." Merrick felt an explosion of warmth come over him before everything turned white, and then returned to normal. While looking in front of him, he suddenly realized he was gripping the throat of Darrell, the innkeeper. He set the man down and backed up. His hands shook violently, and he still didn't trust anything or anyone around him to be real. Then, from within his own body, he heard the voice of Zalron, but it sounded magnified, causing his head to pound harder. Merrick, 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 why did you stop? You were so close to giving yourself over to me, and then you fought me again. Zalron chuckled. Just give up and go back to sleep. Let me take over your body. Merrick paced back and forth, gripping his head in agony. What are you talking about? You already have my body. Why do you need me to play these mind games with me? Just get on with whatever you're going to do and stop torturing me. Plus, you said if I gave myself to you willingly, no one I cared about would be harmed. Breaking your word already? I'm an evil warlock who is thousands of years old. Are you seriously surprised about that? Of course I lied. It's what I do. Zalron clicked his teeth a few times before sighing. You were supposed to stay in that nightmare reality forever. All you needed to do was snap my neck, and the transfer of consciousness would have been complete. And Darrell would be dead. What is wrong with you? Merrick said, attempting to ignore his pounding headache. Just take over my mind already and be done with it. I can't go on like this any longer. The old man sighed. He most likely believes he's awake. By the looks of things, he's being attacked from within his own body. Zalron infiltrated him and is trying to take over his mind. I fear this may be the last we see of your husband as himself. Meridian sobbed as she buried her head in the old man's chest. What are we going to do? I can't lose my husband. Darrell looked at the old wizard. Let me help, old friend. I'll go wake him up from his nightmare. It's the least I can do. Zylock nodded curtly. Very well, but be careful. Smith walked over and smiled. I'll go with him, and George and Arthur can come along. Merrick continued pacing back and forth, hoping the pain in his body and mind would disappear. Zalron hadn't spoken to him in a couple of minutes, and that gave him a small sense of peace. However, that joy went away quickly when he sensed people coming his way. He turned to find Darrell right before him, with Smith, Arthur, and George a few steps back. What seems to be the problem, men? I don't understand why you're coming toward me like I'm a monster. Didn't I just save you all from the Black Hood? Merrick realized immediately after he spoke that he'd said those exact words only a few minutes ago. George moved forward and slammed his knuckle knockers together. My friend, you are not yourself. You have been taken over by the same monster you thought you defeated. We all watched it happen. You need to let us help you. We'll keep you locked up until we figure out a way to save you from this curse. It's for the good of the kingdom and your family. Darrell nodded. Exactly. We care about you, Merrick, and we will help free you. Merrick backed away and waved his hands back and forth. No, stay away from me. I don't know what's going on right now, but I know none of you are real. Who knows what could happen if you come closer? I might just kill you. He smiled with his last words and couldn't believe it. Why was he smiling after saying something so horrific? Was this how the rest of his life would be? His body was slowly losing the battle, and his mind was becoming warped. So, you finally remember, do you, boy? Merrick struggled to stand as his body trembled. Zalron, just end this. Take over my body. I can't take this anymore. Zalron chuckled loudly. You know what you must do in order to end it? You must kill me. Merrick turned and found Zalron before him once more, so he grabbed the man's throat. This time he didn't hesitate. He squeezed as hard as he could until the head popped off the shoulders and the body lay dead on the ground. A loud, sinister laugh came from within him. Good. The transfer can now begin. You did it. Merrick looked down and choked on his tongue. Darrell, the innkeeper, was dead. His head sat a few feet from the body, eyes rolled back. What did you do? Merrick screamed as tears flooded down his cheeks. You killed him. No, boy. You did. Zalron continued laughing. Darrell. No. Zylok rushed over and dropped to his knees. When he looked up, there was a look of rage in his eye that he'd never had before. Merrick continued backing away as his vision started fading. I'm sorry, Zylok. It wasn't me. I didn't mean to. Zalron screamed. Take them all out, Merrick. End them all, now. No, I refuse. You have everything you need to take over my body, so just do it. But you leave them alone. Fine. They're still a nuisance, though. Remove them from my path. Merrick ripped the ground apart, sending out multiple energy balls that struck Zylok and the rest, sending them flying back to the castle. There. It's done. Immediately, he found himself surrounded by the same sea of darkness from earlier. And then, all was silent. There's a break in the story, which means I can take a sip of tea. Cheers, my friends. Good stuff. Meridian rushed to Zylok, monitoring her husband as she did so. She couldn't believe what she was looking at. It was the man she loved, but a sickening smile was on his face, and his eyes glowed purple. It broke her heart, but she knew Zylok was feeling even worse. He'd watched his friend get killed. Meridian frowned. Maybe we do need to fight darkness with darkness. Right now, though, I need to get everyone out of here. She helped the old wizard to his feet. What do we do? Any ideas? Zylok helped Smith, Arthur, and George up and began guiding them into the courtyard and away from Merrick. As they ran, he held up his wrist to Meridian. This device, the one you saw me fidgeting with at the council meeting, isn't some ordinary bracelet. It's a time travel device. Well, I think it is. I've been working on it for years, and it's still only the prototype. But it's the only thing I've got. I can try to get as many people to safety as possible, but... Meridian put her hand up. I only care about my children. You make sure they're safe first. If I get captured, I can take care of myself. The same goes for everyone else here. My little angels are another story. They need you, Zylok. Do you understand what I'm telling you? If I say run, you run and don't argue. Suddenly, an explosion of purple energy blew past them, stopping them in their tracks. A low, evil voice sounded off before the courtyard doors shattered and Zalron walked in. Now, where do you think you're going? I haven't made you my followers yet. Just hold still for a moment. Meridian stepped forward in front of everyone so Zalron couldn't get to them. What are you doing, my love? You're not acting like yourself. Please, don't tell me you gave yourself over to that monster. You think your husband can hear you? He's gone, Meridian. All that's left is Lord Zalron. Now, every time you look at your husband, you'll be reminded of what you once had, but all you'll be left with is me. Energy surrounded Merrick's body, and once it disappeared, his body looked slightly different. His muscles were larger, and his hair had black streaks peppered throughout. Zalron laughed evilly and aimed his hands forward. Now, shall we get down to business? As Meridian was about to move in, she felt someone pull her back. Then a wave of purple energy poured over the entire crowd, and everyone stopped moving. She looked around at her comrades and realized they all had purple eyes. They stood still, as though they couldn't control their own bodies. Somehow, though, she was able to move. She didn't make it obvious, though, in fear of getting caught by their enemy. I put a mind protection spell on us, Zylok whispered, leaning in close to avoid being heard. You stay still and avoid getting yourself killed. I'm going to collect the children, and we'll meet behind the castle in a couple of minutes. Meridian spoke back in a hushed tone. I'm going to try to break my husband free of that monster. Our love has to be strong enough. And what if it isn't? Zylok countered. Meridian's eyes dropped to the ground. I don't want to think about that. Now, go get the children and meet me back here. Once the old man disappeared, she refocused her attention on Zalron. My children, you are now followers of Lord Malice. You'll be ensuring his vision is carried out. Zalron moved closer to the courtyard and grabbed a random sword off the ground. You were once like this rusty blade, useless and broken. But now you are children of Malice. Be grateful that your meaningless lives have a purpose now. Go out and protect my new city. Kill anyone who dare enters. Meridian moved closer and attempted to form a body barrier. It failed. Would she be able to save her husband? She never imagined losing everyone in Targus in one fell swoop. How do you cast out a monster from someone's body? She gritted her teeth, thinking about what she'd say. My love, can you hear me? Show me a sign if my voice is reaching you. Zalron's lip curled into a disfigured smile. Can you hear me, my love? He mocked, laughing as he did so. You're pathetic, little girl. I can't believe you haven't learned your lesson by now. I'm an immortal god. There's nothing you can do to stop me. His face vibrated, and the purple glow of his eyes faded. After that, he rushed forward to Meridian and collapsed in her arms. Meridian looked at him and could see the pain written on his face. His ocean blue eyes were pleading for help, and his lip quivered. She wrapped her arms around his head and sank to the ground, holding him while rocking back and forth. It's okay, Merrick. None of this is your fault. Merrick's lips quivered as he spoke. I don't have much time to speak to you as myself. It's taking all the energy I have just to keep the Black Hood at bay. But I needed one last moment with you. I wanted you to look at me one last time, the way you always have. Meridian tried speaking, but he put a finger to her mouth. I'm sorry for everything, Mary. I wanted to be the savior of our kingdom and protect everyone, like our fathers once did. I took that spell from Zylok, and I know I shouldn't have. But it doesn't matter. It failed. I failed. He forced himself up and held his wife in his arms. You need to get the children and run away. Go to my brother and figure out how to beat this monster. And most importantly, if Zylok comes up with an idea, you listen to him. Going forward, it's vital that we listen to him, for I believe he will be the key. Merrick started shaking, his eyes lighting up with purple energy. He stepped back from his wife and looked at her with fear. Run! Meridian turned and ran. She moved as though there was a fire-breathing dragon trailing behind her. As she neared the edge of the castle for the meeting spot, she immediately froze. Every muscle in her body cramped. All she could feel was an icy hand around her throat. And then she saw him. Zalron was there. Tears fled from her eyes. It broke her heart to look at her husband's face, but know that it wasn't him. She coughed and gasped. Thought you tried to get away, huh? Zalron said, snarling. Go burn in hell, she said, spitting blood onto his face. The Black Hood chuckled as he wiped the liquid from his face. Still got some fight left, huh? I've got some plans for you. Oh, yes. I'm going to enjoy this. A bright purple light shone a few yards away before a shockwave went out. Zylok stood with Corey perched on his shoulder and Eliath and Sindral in front of him. Step away from her, you beast. Zylok's voice echoed off the mountains. Zalron scoffed, then threw Meridian to the ground. Following that, he pulled two black blades out of thin air and thrust them through her shoulders, keeping her pinned. She cried out in pain as he kicked her in the stomach. Filthy animals, all of you. He pointed at Zylok and screamed, You shouldn't have interfered in my plans, old man. You've always been a problem, and you're going to regret ever having messed with me. Eliath and Sindral screamed for their mother before attempting to go to her. Zylok blocked them and pressed the screen on his wrist device. You'll be destroyed, Zalron, if it's the last thing I do. Meridian lifted her face and shouted, Remember what I told you, Zylok. Now is the time. Go now and leave me. I'll be fine. Take care of my children. I'll see you again. She watched Zalron charge after her children, but Zylok had a purple and red energy shield around himself and the kids. And then they were gone. Nothing was left but a small trace of ash and dirt. Zalron's roars made her happy. She knew he didn't get what he wanted, and she'd made sure of it. She thought about her children as she faded out of consciousness. Another break in the story, because if I remember last time, this chapter was of a decent length. So I'll take another sip. Gotta keep the old pipes moistened. That's right. I said moist. Ramirez, thank you for the lurk. Zalron released lines of electricity. They struck the castle walls, breaking chunks of rock and limestone loose. That damned imbecile took them from me. He ruined all my plans. How on earth am I to explain this to the council? He paced around the courtyard for a few moments, trying to figure out what to do until it clicked. Forcing energy into his brain, he dove through Merrick's memories until coming across a large, bulky man who looked similar to Merrick. Ah, the God King. I remember him. Everything is making sense now. Merrick screamed from within his body. Leave my brother alone, Darkhood. He has nothing to do with any of this. Zalron took one finger and placed it on his chest, loosing red energy into himself. Eventually, Merrick's voice silenced. That's enough out of you. Now watch as I bring justice to this world. As he was preparing to leave, his eyes drifted upon the decapitated innkeeper. He thought hard for a few moments, and then smiled. You can never have enough minions. He aimed his hand and shot a beam of white-hot energy at the body. Immediately, the head started moving toward the corpse, and then reattached. Daryl stood slowly. Once seeing Zalron, his eyes went wide with shock. Zylok's beard! What the hell happened? Zalron snapped his finger and shot a beam of purple energy into him, silencing the man. Then, he pointed off to the city. Go, join your brothers and sisters. Protect my city. The man's eyes ignited with violet energy, and then he left. Zalron walked over to Meridian's body and picked her up, throwing her over his shoulder. She was still unconscious from the pain, and he was glad for it. He knew exactly how much of a problem she could cause for him. He phased inside the castle and looked around the lower levels until finding the dungeons. Placing her in one of them, he locked the door. With a swipe of his hand, he placed an anti-magic barrier around the entire lower level. He then put an acid degeneration spell on the bars and walls around her, so if she tried to escape, it would eat the skin from her body. Nodding in acceptance, he clapped once, and then phased. A moment later, he stared at a cave entrance that read Basilius. Inside the cave, torches cast a garish light upon the tunnel. Upon entering a large open room, he found the Godkin sitting in his throne chair at the far end. Let's see how this goes. Brother, I didn't expect you to be here for a few months. Did you defeat the Black Hood? Kairos stood from his seat and walked forward, allowing his face to become visible in the light. Zalron started laughing. It started low and slow, but eventually became high-pitched and piercing. Defeat me? No one can defeat me. I'm immortal. Kairos walked closer and grabbed a nearby torch, bringing it over to get a better look. You're not sounding like yourself, Merrick. Did you take that dark spell from Zylok? Kairos threw his free hand into the air. I warned the old man that would happen, and now look at you. My baby brother is tainted. Zalron realized he had the upper hand. He looked like the man's brother and decided to play into it a bit more. Nonsense, brother. I'm doing just fine. I simply came here after my victory to have a drink. Kairos tilted his head with a confused expression. You don't sound okay, brother. What happened? Tell me. He led them back to his chair where a long table sat. He grabbed 2 goblets of wine and handed one over. Zalron took his golden cup and looked at the liquid, sloshing it around a bit before taking a sip and spitting it out. What kind of primitive drink is this? Are you trying to poison me? What are you talking about? You love my homemade wine. Brother, what is going on? Zalron grabbed Kairos by the throat and tossed him across the cave. The area shook violently as a few torches fell and chunks of rock descended. He clicked his teeth as he went toward his prey. I can't play this game anymore. I'm not your brother. I'm simply using his body as a shell. No telling how long it will last me for, but so far, I'm enjoying it. Kairos shook his head out a bit and then stood. He narrowed his eyes at the body ignited with an orange energy. Dark Hood, you monster. I should have known. How sick of you to take my brother away from his family. Zalron scoffed as he kicked a large rock out of the way. What is it with you and your brother? For the last blazing time, the name is Lord Zalron. Do you need me to spell it out for you? Kairos shot forward at lightning speed, slamming his foot into the Black Hood. But Zalron was prepared. He grabbed the man's leg, swung him around in a circle, and launched him into the wall. Then he shot forward and grabbed Kairos' arms, breaking them at the elbows. The bulky king cried out in pain as he sat, broken and angry. You should have known better, God King. What an interesting name to give yourself. You should have thought twice before calling yourself a god. I am the one who has that title. After I kill you, I think I'll go kill everyone in your kingdom. Kairos stood and slammed his head into Zalron. It was enough to send the man tumbling back a bit, but not enough to do actual damage. The Black Hood grabbed him by the garments and tossed him across the room again. This time, the man didn't get back up. Suddenly, he felt someone coming from behind. And when he turned around, he saw a younger man with short blonde hair racing at him with green energy swords. Zalron laughed as he blocked the attack easily, then kicked the man in the stomach, sending him to the ground. As he approached with his hand raised, an idea came across his mind. Who are you, boy? Ezra Zane. That was my father you just attacked, and I will not allow... Zalron put up a finger. Yes, I know. You won't allow me to touch anyone else. I've heard the speech before. He crouched down and got close to Ezra's face. If you want me to leave everyone here alone, I'll do that. You only have to do one thing for me. Ezra tilted his head but remained silent. Become my disciple and work for me. I won't turn you into a mindless follower, as long as you obey every command I give you. I lost my prize in Targus, and I intend to get it back. What do you say? You won't get a better offer. Ezra stood and backed up a few paces, but continued to hold his ground. If I do this, you'll stay away from Vasilius? I have your word. Zalron nodded. Yes, my word. Now what's it going to be? Ezra put away his weapons. I agree with your terms. However, if you ever lie to me or try to trick me in the future, the deal's off. I'll kill you. Zalron held out his hand. Of course, I would never go back on my word. Now take my hand, boy. It's time to leave. I have to go. Good night, y'all. Good night, Kay. I hope you get some rest, and don't whack your finger in your sleep. What are we going to do with you? Once Ezra obeyed, the Black Hood phased them to Targus and went to the pile of ash and dirt on the ground. It was the last spot he'd seen Zylok and the children, and figured he might have a shot to replicate the spell if he tried. He looked at Ezra. I'm sending you after the traitors, Zylok, Sindral, and Eliath. I'm sure you're familiar with them. Unfortunately, I can't go with you. I have tasks to maintain here. Either way, you need to find them and bring them back to Targus. Create whatever technology you need to. Also, this is very important. I want you to create more followers to bring back to me. They will be used in the coming wars to serve Lord Malice. Once you have a way of contacting me, I want to have updates weekly. Those are your tasks. Best of luck, Ezra Zane. Zalron kneeled next to the dirt pile and placed his hands on it. How had Zylok used a spell so powerful without using dark magic? Zalron wondered if maybe the old man was more powerful than he was, and simply hid it from others. It made sense, considering he'd never been able to meet the wizard in combat. Either way, he wasn't worried. He was a god, and he'd be victorious. A couple of moments later, a bright explosion of purple and red energy formed a dome. He motioned at Ezra with a wave of his hand. Well, off you go. Don't let me down. Zalron placed his hand on the back of Ezra's neck and smiled. Ezra approached the violent energy dome and walked inside. The surrounding power zapped and circled for a few seconds longer, and then it was gone. But he was somewhere else. He found himself in a valley with plentiful trees and mountains. When he looked at the ground, he found 3 pairs of footprints. Zylok and my cousins must have gotten here just before me. Wherever here is. He found some bright lights shining in the distance and made his way toward them. I know one thing for certain. When I get the opportunity, I'm going to destroy Zalron. He picked the wrong family to mess with. And that concludes chapter 17. And Gray's here. Hi, Gray. How the heck are you? And the Fantasy Man's arrived. Hello, sir. We just finished chapter 17. That was a good chapter. The inner battle between Merrick and Zalron was really well thought out. I enjoyed that. That was good. I can understand that that might have been really tricky to write without it, coming off as confusing. But yeah, that was really good. We would have read it last time, but I was exhausted last time. And so we only read like 1 chapter. So my apologies for that. But a reader that doesn't read very well is not worth the time. So I didn't want to waste everybody's time. But yeah, that was a good chapter. I really liked it. Well done. And how are you, Gray? It's great to see you. Oh, that was a nice pop of the neck. Crunch. Chapter 18 just looks quite as delicious. Just looks just as delicious. I can't even talk. It's a good thing the words are written down for me, because I'd be screwed otherwise. Chapter 18 is called A Man's Regret. The question is, which man? Is it Merrick? Is it Ezra? Although he's a child, or at least young, from what I can imagine, from what I understand. It doesn't slow down? All right, well, that's okay with me. That is okay with me. Just more crazy stuff. So where are you at? He's 18. Okay. So he's young, but he's a young adult. Fantasy Man, who is our author, by the way. Where are you at right now? Are you on the road? Are you back home for a bit? What's the deal? You in the truck? Y'all trucking? Or did you get a break? I'm assuming you're not driving since you're typing or responding. At least you better not be. So you are on the road, but you're not like actually, literally on the road right now. Right? Sir. Chat, he's on the road, literally. I'm sure you're using talk to text. You better be. I mean, lie to me. Otherwise, I'm kicking you out of the stream right now. Voice text. All right. Good enough. I can take that. I'll accept that. But either way, it's great to see you. I just don't want to hear about you on the news. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Excellent. Well, I hope everyone's doing okay. I may have put some of you to sleep already. I'm not sure. It's very possible. Either way, it's great to see you. I hope you're enjoying the piece of a book. You won't? Good. Don't forget, after tonight's read, in about 1 hour, I'll be in Discord reading Iron Flame. So that's happening. Oh, and Mr. Author Fantasy Man. I've mentioned this a couple of times now in stream, but I wanted you to know, just in case you're tuning in at a future date. My streams are going to start 1 hour earlier as of Sunday. So normally I start 7 Central about an hour ago. On Sunday and moving forward, they will start at 6 Central instead. So just throwing that little tidbit your way, just in case you're trying to catch at the beginning and then you're like, wait, why is he an hour in already? So just letting you know. Main reason being just because I'm getting tired in the evening a lot more. And if I did need extra time to finish a chapter without rushing it, we'd have it. So, all right. I'm going to take one more sip because this tea is delicious. And then we're going to get back into it. So good. So good. Chapter 18, page 185, is called A Man's Regret. Zylock tried calming the children down, as they were still frantically crying and shaking. He couldn't believe the events they'd had to witness. At only 8 and 11 years old, they'd lost both their parents and home in one fell swoop. Desperately, he tried thinking of a way to calm them down. How do you comfort a child who just lost their parents? No ideas came to his mind, so he wrapped them into a hug instead. Newsflash, that's basically all you can do. It's going to be okay. Eliath looked up with misty eyes. You left Mother there, What's going to happen? Sindril looked at her brother and sniffled. What could we have done, little brother? We aren't strong enough to save our parents. Xylock kneeled and put his hands on both their heads. I'm going to fix this. I promise. However, I don't want you to have to worry about the things you just witnessed while living there in your new life, or while living here in your new life. He looked at his wrist device and stroked his beard. It seems we've landed in the future. I think we will be safe here, but I'm going to have to split you two up. If Zalron figures out how to get here, I can't let anything happen to you. I made a promise to your mother, and I intend to keep it. Eliath rubbed his nose and blinked his eyes a few times. Oh, by the way, before I can continue, I think even though Xylock has a prototype on his wrist for the whole time travel thing, the text said he tapped the screen. There were no such things as screens where he came from. So I'm assuming that this device was a futuristic type deal that maybe got an update or something. I don't know. It's just my guess. There's nothing that supports that. It's just me thinking out loud. Oh, shoot. And we have an ad starting in like a minute. There are? Well, I meant there's nothing that I had read that I could have seen as being signs that he had been to the future. But yes, he made the screen. That much I knew. Yeah. Anyway, my thoughts are eluding me. Let me get back to the story. Eliath rubbed his nose and blinked his eyes a few times. What do you mean, old man? What are you going to do? Xylock looked at them and said nothing. He didn't want to betray their trust, but he didn't know what else to do at this point. Going with his better judgment, he gave them one last hug and then gripped their heads. Memory block. Crimson energy flowed over the kids and their eyes went hazy for a time. Live peaceful lives full of love and joy, and when the time for war comes, I will restore you. A few tears streamed down his cheeks. Forgive me. The children both stared back at him with blank expressions. Eliath tilted his head sideways. Who are you? How did I get here? He looked at Sindril, who repeated the same question. Xylock bit his tongue as he thought of a response. He wanted to tell them exactly who he was, but he knew if he heard too many things, or if they heard too many things about their old lives, it would break his spell. So he simply smiled and ruffled their hair. I'm your godfather. Your parents charged me with taking care of you until I could find you a good home. Sindril started twirling her hair in between her fingers. What happened to our parents? Xylock sighed. They passed away, I'm afraid. But I assure you, they loved you with all their hearts. Relief poured over him as the kids nodded their heads and seemed to accept the answers he gave them. As he looked forward, he realized they were coming up upon a large green sign on the road. It showed him a place called Bozeman, Montana. It was 10 miles away. Montana. Nice. He clenched his fists and gathered the children close to him in order to phase, but then stopped. I wonder if magic is forbidden in this time. I'll need to be extra careful to ensure no one sees me. Xylock motioned the children to come to him, and once they did, he grabbed onto them and paused again. He'd almost forgotten that he'd put the memory block on them, and he knew if he phased with them, it would bring up questions that he wouldn't be able to answer without messing up the spell. He decided to continue walking, and eventually came upon a small town called Lola. He found everything strange, like the way buildings looked, or how there were old or odd pieces of metal with wheels moving up and down the road. What on God's green earth are those? He never expected things to change so much in a few hundred years. But then again, creating technology was always something he enjoyed working on. He figured there must have been some brilliant minds who came after this time, who created everything. Wait, what if I'm still alive? Will I have to worry about running into my future self? Blazes, time travel is confusing. What's the currency like here? Will I be able to get myself around? Zylok felt like his head was going to explode from all the unanswered questions. Zylok should have played with his time-traveling device a little bit more often. When he checked on the children, he found them looking around at all the sights with wide eyes, holding hands with each other. At least something hasn't changed with them. It breaks my heart to separate them. Refocusing on the busy street, he found a building with a sign reading, "Gas station." Jumping jaguars. What are they making? Explosives? He chuckled at his own thoughts before guiding the children inside the store. Once inside, he found a young man with a messy beard and freckles on his face, sucking on a piece of candy and watching some sort of device Zylok had never seen before. He walked up to the counter and smiled. "Greetings, lad. My name is..." He paused for a moment, realizing his name might not be with the times. He thought hard and long, and then his eyes came across a piece of paper on the counter that said Professor Ian's Candy Shop. He nodded to himself and continued speaking. "My name is Ian Gray, and I wanted to inquire about something. Where around here do they accept children?" The man at the counter opened his mouth and the candy fell out. I'm sorry, bro. Did you just ask me where you can turn children into?" Zylok nodded cheerfully. "Indeed. These two youngsters need a home, and I've been tasked with ensuring their safety. I'm new to this area." Why can I see this being played out on TV? It's fantastic. The gas attendant tilted his head and picked up a phone and began dialing numbers into it. "I'm gonna have to call this in." Zylok started panicking before coming up with a plan. Looking down, he found Sindral and Eliath distracted, looking at items in the store. So he raised his hands closer to the man and loosed a small amount of misty purple air. Hi, Mal. How are ya? It's good to see you. Hi, Bookie. How are you, dear? We've just time traveled into the future, which is more like modern day, and it's hilarious. It's like we took a fantasy action story and turned it into a fantasy comedy. That's my walk-in noise. I'm doing good. How are you? No, your walk-in noise needs to be the goat noises that I clipped of your channel. I need you to send me those noises, and then I can make you an actual sound. So you can type in like !Malico and it'll play the noise. Do it, please. That'll be awesome. Just like that one. Same thing. Well, not same concept. Oh, this is fantastic. Right, small amount of misty purple energy. The man's eyes went wide and then put the phone down. You'll tell me where I can take the children to find a home. The wizard spoke softly. It's almost like a Jedi. The attendant nodded. In Bozeman, just up the road a few miles, there is a place called Stonewater Orphanage. That's where most people go. Anything else I can help you with? Zaylock realized he still didn't know what currency looked like and wasn't sure about how he'd get to his destination. Can you show me what your currency looks like? I need a way to get to the Bozeman place you speak of. The gas attendant opened the registered door and pulled out a green bill. This is our money. We have bills ranging from 1 to 100. If you need a ride, just wait outside at the street corner and the next taxi driver can take you there. Zaylock nodded, and before leaving, he turned one last time. Actually, do you have a few pieces of parchment I could have? If you mean paper, yeah. Hold on one second. The man walked back to a corner office and came back a moment later with a thick stack of white paper. Here you go, pal. You have a wonderful day, and thanks for stopping in. Zaylock grabbed his supplies, thanked the man, then snapped his finger, removing the mind-alteration spell. He'd gotten all the information he needed and was ready to take Eliath to his new home. With the memory of what the dollar bill had looked like, he easily transmuted the stack of white paper in his robe pocket into $100 bills. Can you teach me how to do that? I got a stack of paper behind me at the printer. Just saying. He knew having money was going to be important. He just wasn't enjoying how different everything was. The way people spoke, the way things were set up, and the way the air smelled. Zaylock motioned the children over to him, and before exiting the building, turned to the attendant who was watching the television. What is that thing you're watching? The gas attendant looked at him with confusion as he pointed at the flat-screen monitor. You mean the TV, bro? Zaylock turned his head in confusion. What the blazes is a TV? Bro, you're super annoying. Are you one of those old degenerate nomad guys or something? Get a life. Zaylock raised his hands before remembering not to use magic. He didn't understand half of the phrases he was hearing, and he didn't like the disrespect he received from the attendant. But he already removed the spell, so what was the point of continuing to argue? Leading the children out of the street corner, he smiled. Degenerate. I love that word. That place was really neat, Eliath said, looking up at the old man. Can we come back sometime? Zaylock chuckled before waving down a vehicle approaching with the word taxi on it. Absolutely. First chance we get. His robe shifted for a second before a small mouse popped its head out and made its way to Zaylock's shoulder. Be careful. Don't let the children see you. I have myself cloaked, Corey whispered back. Be careful with your use of magic when they're around. Don't want the spell to break. He crawled back into Zaylock's garments. A talking mouse would also be kind of cool. Doesn't have to be a mouse, though. If we could just make my dog and cat talk, that would be enough. Zaylock had hidden Corey the moment they arrived in the future. He didn't want his closest friend to get captured and become a scientific project. He also didn't want the kids to see him. There were a lot of things for him to keep track of, and he didn't want to slip up. The taxi driver stopped in front of him and rolled down his window. Where to, bruh? Zaylock led the kids closer and brought his head down. Bozeman. A place called Stonewater Orphanage. The wizard tilted his head. What on earth is a bruh? But you would really want your dog and cat to talk? They've seen things. Yes, I really do. Because then when I ask them, what do you want? Maybe they'll actually tell me. Especially the cat. The driver nodded and pointed to the front and back. Hop in, dog. I'll get you to your destination. I'm not an animal. That's good. Zylok said fiercely. I'm oh, never mind. Once the kids were inside the vehicle, Zylok got into the front seat and let out a deep breath. He was ready for a long night of rest, so he could reawaken his mind and get down to business. Fantasy Man, how come nobody has commented on their dress, their attire? Surely they are not dressed to modern day appearances. Just, assuming. Or maybe that's coming. Who knows? Figuring out a plan of how to beat Zalron and how to get back to their time. He looked at his wrist device and studied it closely. There were a few cracks on the screen, and the cylinder crystals had lost their color. It must have broken after the journey here. LARP man? LARP man. Think of how many people dress for events like it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess it's not really that big of a deal if you're used to seeing people in cosplay. Maybe the people don't care. Would you comment on someone's clothing walking down the street? You have a good point, Amlas. I probably would not. That's a very good point. My name is Doug, and I'm pleased to be your driver today. By the way, that's a cool watch, Gramps. Where'd you get it? Doug looked at him hazy-eyed. Zylok pulled his sleeve back over his device and shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't wanted the man to see his device, but it was too late. Maybe he was overreacting. Would people here think it was odd that he had an advanced magic-powered wrist device? With a little thought, he decided to indulge the driver. I made it myself. Doug nodded before taking an exit for the orphanage. You must be a rocket scientist or something. That's pretty rad. No, not a scientist, a professor. Zylok tapped his wrist device again, and then looked at Doug. What year is it? The taxi driver looked at him with a goofy smile. It's the year 2042, dog. With him saying rad, I kind of thought it was the 70s, but it's good to know what the year is. Zylok was even more confused now. When he'd left Targus, it was the year 10,002. How could it be less years now? Did they start a new era? Did the entire calendar system change? Blazes, I really hate time travel. Zylok stared out the window and found a sign that said, Adam's Auto Body. He chuckled to himself. I kind of like that name. The kids are going to need new names if I'm going to keep them safe. I think I found Eliath's alias. Eliath's alias. As he continued resting his head against the seat, he could hear the children talking to each other about all the surrounding sights. Zylok was glad they were happy right now. Even if it wasn't real happiness, it was better than no happiness at all. That'll be $95, please. Holy crap, Doug said. Zylok shook his thoughts away and nodded. He reached into his robe pocket and grabbed one of the bills, handing it to the man. Thank you for taking us here so efficiently. You're a good man. Atari. $95? Are you trying to tell me inflation's gonna get worse? How are you, Atari? It's good to see you. Good lord. Doug stared at the money with a smile. No problem, bro. Let me get your change. Zylok ignored the man's last comment and simply waved his hand for the children to follow him. Once the taxi driver left, he got down on his knees and looked at Eliath. I want you to be brave for me. I know this is going to be a bit scary, going to a new place and all, but you are a strong young man. Promise me you'll be strong. We have a super typhoon here. That's bad. And you're just chilling on Twitch. A super typhoon. Okay. Stay safe. Yeah. Priority number 1. Stay safe. Eliath nodded sharply. I will. You promise you come see me again? Yes, I'll come see you again. Zylok placed his hand on Eliath's back as they walked toward the orphanage. Before they arrived, however, he released a small amount of silver energy into the boy, making sure Sindral didn't notice. He wanted to make sure he'd have a way of keeping track of Eliath when he wasn't around. He stepped into the large red and black brick building and looked around, attempting to find someone. His eyes eventually landed on a younger woman with long brown hair and a slim frame. No other thing to do? No Wi-Fi, no light? Good thing mobile data is still okay, just paid a visit to the Bookfather. Wait, was that meant for me? I hope you can still charge your phone. You still have electricity? You said there's no Wi-Fi and no lights? She smiled as soon as she saw them. Hello, sir. I'm Kelly. How can I help you today? Zylok walked up to the counter and held out his hand. I'm Ian. Pleased to meet you, my dear. I need to find this young man a home. Would you be able to help with that? Kelly looked over the counter and grinned as soon as she saw Eliath. He's a very handsome young man. What's his name? His name is Adam, Zylok said cheerfully. He's a good lad. His parents unfortunately passed away, and I was charged with taking care of them. Because of life circumstances, I'm not able to care for him anymore, and I wanted to make sure he'd be in a good home. Yep, the lights are busted because we can't buy a new fuse for any hardware store. Won't interrupt you anymore, and we'll be looking. You're not interrupting. I'm glad you're here. Kelly nodded her understanding, then grabbed a piece of paper and a pen. I'll need you to fill out a bit of paperwork first, and then I can call you in a few weeks once we have a room for him. Do you have identification for yourself and the child? Zylok became flustered for a moment. He never realized this would be part of the process, and he was beginning to become afraid that his plans wouldn't work out. Then he got an idea. He looked down at the children and pointed toward the door. Why don't you two go play outside for a moment while I fill out some papers? Once they were outside, he looked back at Kelly, raised his hands, and shot a beam of purple energy into her forehead. Her eyes went blank for a moment. Then she smiled at him as if she'd forgotten the last few minutes of the conversation. Hello, sir. How can I help you? Zylok added a simple question to make sure his spell was functioning properly. Could you please bypass the paperwork and take a child who needs a home? Kelly nodded and moved the papers away. Absolutely, sir. I'll make room for him. What's his name? Zylok yelled out to the children, and once they came back inside, he pointed to Eliath. This is Adam. Kelly came from behind the counter and kneeled, holding her hand out to Eliath. Well, sweetheart, are you ready to go meet the other kids? Eliath nodded and looked over to Zylok one last time. Will I see you again? Zylok came over and gave him a hug, looking into his bright blue eyes once more. Oh yes, we'll meet again, and when we do, we'll have lots to talk about. You behave yourself until then. I love you, young man. Kelly grabbed Eliath's hand and started walking down the hallway. We will take very good care of him. You have nothing to worry about. Have a great day, sir. Once she was no longer looking, Zylok snapped his fingers and removed the mind alteration spell. Then he grabbed Sindrel's hand and started walking toward the door. Well, my dear, let's go find you a good home as well. There's a break in the story, which you all know what that means. That's right. Tea time. Zylok shut the door to the Hazelton Orphanage in Clearwater, Virginia. It had been a few days since dropping off Eliath, and it was just as hard when he left Sindrel. He'd given her the name Carmen, and placed the same spell on her she did with Eliath. He knew exactly where both children were, and would be able to sense if danger was nearby. As he walked through the town, he thought back to the events in Tarkus. Guilt ate away at him. How could he have let Zalron kill Daryl? How could he have failed so horribly? At this point, he wasn't sure how he'd fix their situation. It was the first time in his life that he'd failed so miserably. Normally, the old wizard would shake off a loss and come back twice as strong the next time. This time, however, he was broken. Why not just use his, time travel device and... I'm sure there's a reason. He wanted to find a place to build a temporary home and allow himself the time to grieve, as well as letting Corey out. Upon arriving at another gas station, he decided he needed to find a map of the land. He walked up to the counter and waved at the attendant. She seemed even grumpier than the last one he'd met in Montana. Hello, my friend. Nova. Hi there, got you tabbed? Well, thank you. I appreciate you. Do you know where I might obtain a map of the land? She curled up her lip and handed him a folded up piece of paper that read, United States. You going to a LARP festival or something? Zylok gritted his teeth. I'm sorry. Going to a what? Live action roleplay. She blew a gum bubble before letting it pop loudly, and then nodded toward the map. Did you want to buy that? Or were you just going to keep staring at my chest? Her words dripped with annoyance. Zylok raised his eyebrows. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your bosom. I simply couldn't help but notice the interesting designs on your garment. Okay. Whatever, dude. If you want the map, it's $5. She narrowed her eyes while tapping the map against the counter. Zylok pulled another $100 bill out and gave it to her. There you go. Thank you so much. He grabbed the map and walked out of the store. He could hear the attendant yelling at him about forgetting his change, but he continued walking. That's a very expensive paper map. When he opened the map, his heart started beating faster and sweat poured from his brow. Flashes of Meridian getting stabbed and Daryl getting murdered played in his mind on repeat, and he couldn't get it to stop. As he tried focusing on the map, his vision faded in and out of rhythm with his in and out in rhythm with his heartbeat. And before he realized it, he was standing in an open alley, an open valley, surrounded by tall mountains with a small lake. Reading words, me do good. Corey crawled out from his garments and transformed into his human form. He grabbed the old man by the shoulders and shook him back and forth. What were you thinking, Zylock? You phased on a crowded street. What if people would have seen you? Zylock took a few steps back from his friend and collapsed, letting out a scream that echoed far and wide. He let the tears flow. No one was around to see him vulnerable, except for Corey, and he was okay with that. He'd created an image of himself over the years as being someone who didn't break, who always had the answers. This time he had nothing. He felt broken inside. I failed everyone, Corey. How am I supposed to look any of them in the eye ever again? Corey kneeled and put a finger under the man's chin. Because you're Zylock Gray. You always find a way to fix things, and you'll do the same thing again. You just need to focus and begin your mission. Zylock forced himself up and looked around. The valley somewhat reminded him of Targus, and that brought a slight bit of peace to him. Aiming his hand up, he tossed a pink orb into the sky and snapped his fingers, causing the energy to shoot out before coming down. It formed an enormous dome, and a moment later became invisible. That should keep any unwanted guests out. After putting up his invisibility barrier, he aimed his hands at a few trees and rocks and surrounded them with purple energy. The object swirled around in a violent circle for a few seconds. Once everything stopped, a home appeared. Oh, it's a lot like a video game. He admired his work of art. It was similar to his home he lived in before moving to Targus. All right. We now have a home base of operation. Let's split up so we can cover more ground. We'll meet back here in a couple of days. I need paper, oil, candles, wine, water, and food. I think that should be a good starting list for now. Corey hugged him, then transformed into a raven and flew into the sky. Zylock pulled out his map again and forced energy into it. The paper glowed white for a moment before a few moving red dots showed up. One was close to him. Another was in Bozeman, Montana. And the last one was in Clearwater, Virginia. He nodded confidently to himself. At least I can keep track of everyone. I'll feel better once we're all home. But this will have to do for now. Zylock looked at his own dot on the map, which was colored purple. He traced his eyes until seeing the city by the name of Golden. Bringing his finger down, he touched the map and phased out of sight. And that is the end of chapter 18. Right? Yes. I know numbers. Well, I gotta say, we went from lots of damage and death and destruction and dismay to, like, hilarious in a new chapter. And I loved it. It was awesome. That was good. That was really good. What in the blazes is that thing? Oh, well done. You had fun writing it? Yeah, I bet you did. That was good. We're going to read one more chapter because I think we have time for it. Chapter 19 is called A CEO is Born. And the funny thing is, it's somewhere in Iowa. Now, I'm not sure where in Iowa, but it's year 2041, Roadhouse Saloon, Boehner, Iowa. Where is that? I'm going to have to look that up. But anyway, this will be our final chapter for tonight. And then we'll be back on Sunday at 6 Central. And don't forget, after this, I'll be in Discord reading Iron Flame. It's made up. Oh, come on. For a made up town, though, it sounds like it would be in Iowa. So you got me there. Ezra took a bite of his steak. The loud roars of the saloon made it difficult for him to focus on much of anything. As he studied the people, he realized they were watching something on the television that had to do with balls and long wooden objects. When his waitress came over, he put his hand up. "Excuse me, I was wondering if you could tell me what they're watching on the television." She giggled lightly before putting her hands on her hips. "It's baseball, darling. Do they not have that where you're from?" Ezra remained silent. He simply smiled and nodded. When she walked away, he grabbed a pen in front of him and jotted the word baseball down on a piece of paper. "So far, I've got television, cars, gasoline, solar panels, cell phones, dollar bills, and airplanes. I wonder what other things I'm going to come across while here. Everything is so different. I don't know how I'm going to manage building technology when I can barely get myself around the land." He gritted his teeth as he continued thinking about the last few days. He'd transmuted a stack of paper into multiple bills. After getting on a bus and going to Iowa, he created himself a fake ID, social security card, birth certificate, and found a wallet he really liked that reminded him of home. It had a large fish jumping out of the waves engraved in the leather. It's based off the Banner Township, Iowa, which is next to Sioux City. Okay. That makes sense. As he finished the last few bites of his steak, he thought about his next move. He wished he didn't have to be here. Everything around him was foreign. He'd concluded that he was in the future. The names of everything was different, including the planet, but didn't have time to worry about that. The only thing he cared about was completing his mission so he could save his father and kingdom. He also hoped he'd be able to figure out a way to defeat Zalron. How could he do that while protecting his family? Perhaps the right moment would present itself, and maybe Zylok and his cousins would help him, if he didn't ruin their relationship by that time. After paying for his food, he departed the small restaurant and made his way to a motel down the street. He had a plan he needed to get in motion, but his mind was still blank. When he arrived at his room, he walked inside, tossed his boots to the corner of the room, and laid down on the bed. Picking up the remote from the nightstand next to him, he turned on the television. He chuckled. Technology had come so far. It made him think of all the times people gave Zylok a hard time for being creative. Imagine if they could see what it all becomes, old man. As he was getting ready to close his eyes, something on the television made him sit up. "We want you, brave men and women, give up their freedom every day for this country to help keep us safe. Come join the United States Marine Corps and find out what it means to be truly strong." Ezra threw a clenched fist in the air and started babbling excitedly. "That's it. They still have a military today. And that's how I get started. I need to meet with one of their leaders and offer them a way to protect their men and women. Maybe I can figure out a way to create a serum to advance their DNA and strengthen them. If I can prove that I'm able to do that, they might fund me in starting my own company. Helping the military can be my headline, while I figure out a way to create technology to get me back home. He gritted his teeth as he thought about his other tasks. I don't want to take my cousins and Zylok back to Zalron. There has to be another way to get around all of this. I don't want to create followers either. Ezra jumped off the bed and started pacing as he continued talking to himself. If it's going to be a technology building, it's going to have to be huge, and that means I'll need more money. Okay, first thing tomorrow, I will figure out where the military leaders are and make my way there. This might actually end up being fun. Ezra chuckled before getting back into bed and falling asleep. Poor kid. 3 days later, Ezra hopped off a bus in the busy metropolitan of, busy metropolitan area of Quantico, Virginia. He'd secured a meeting with a high-ranking admiral from the Pentagon. How? During his travel, he watched a movie titled Limitless, and it gave him the idea of making a pill for people to take instead of a serum. Although, he still had to make one to show to the admiral. Perhaps if he used his magic to make it, it seemed like the pills work. It would be enough to convince the military man. No, he would have to make sure the pills would give someone temporary powers at the very least. As he walked down the sidewalk toward the meeting spot, he thought back on the things his father had taught him growing up. His life had been very different from his cousins. Kairos had trained him from the age of 6. It allowed him to know more spells than someone his age normally would. Then he remembered the spell of sharing energy with an object or person. Well, that might work. The pill might not give someone powers for long at first, but I just need to prove the concept works. Ezra grinned as he entered a gas station. He needed to find a bottle of pills to use for his experiment. I wish I had Zylok here with me. He'd be able to do this in his sleep. With a long sigh as he walked down an aisle with pill bottles, how was he supposed to know what any of the pills were for? He saw one bottle that said liquid gel, fast-acting headache relief. What? Pills for headaches? A small chuckle escaped him as he grabbed the bottle. He took the bottle to the front counter and paid before going out to the back alley. Opening the bottle, he took one pill out and held it in his palm. He looked around once more, making sure no one could see him. Once he confirmed he was alone, he focused on the pill. He held his free hand over it and focused on his magic energy. His heart started beating faster than normal, and then something strange occurred. Red and yellow lightning zapped out of his fingers and struck the pill. Mouth gaping, he stared at his hand. Tiny lines of electricity weaved in between his fingers fluidly. Something about his body's magic felt different. He picked up the pill and held it close to his eye. Tiny specks of red and yellow lightning swam around, but it was so small no one would notice at first glance. He nodded to himself and put his new creation back inside the medication bottle before releasing more magic into the rest of the pills. Then, he placed the container inside his pocket and turned around to continue on toward his destination. Except, standing in front of him was a man with a wide-open mouth and a look of fear on his face. "You're one of them black magic folk, aren't you?" Ezra stepped forward and put his hands up in a non-threatening way. "You weren't meant to see that." The scared man turned and ran. Ezra rushed after him with his hand held out, trying to grab hold of him. Then the same feeling happened. He felt like Knives were trying to rip through his skin from the inside. Before he could understand anything, a beam of red light shot from his palm and struck the scared man, turning him into a pile of ash. Ezra dropped to his knees and stared blankly at the debris. Head throbbing, he looked down at his forearms and saw a couple of small spots glowing purple. Before he could study them further, they disappeared. What the hell is happening to me? Ezra forced himself to stand, his legs still wobbly and his vision blurry. He looked around the small alley to make sure no one saw what happened, and to his great relief, there wasn't a soul in sight. He rushed back to the sidewalk and continued toward his destination. The entire way there, the scene repeated in his mind. He'd killed a man. That wasn't something he'd ever done before, and he didn't want to do it again. It made him sick. He thought about the small purple spots he'd found on his arms and wondered what they could have been. When he used magic, his energy was emerald or gold. He had a feeling Zalron was behind this, but he had no way of proving it. So he continued the last few blocks with a blank mind, preparing himself for the meeting. Once inside the restaurant, he spotted an older man with short gray hair and a stern expression. The man waved him over to the table, and once he sat, he let out a slow breath of air and held out his hand. "Hello, sir. You must be the Admiral I'm here to meet." The man nodded curtly and shook his hand. "Admiral Dan Stevens. Pleasure to meet you. My secretary filled me in a little about your proposition. Something about helping us make invincible soldiers. Is that correct?" Ezra grabbed the pill bottle from his pocket, opened it, and placed one of the blue pills on the table. Before he could explain, a waitress approached the table and pulled out a small notepad. "What can I get you gentlemen today?" "Coffee, black, and 2 eggs sunny side over with a helping of bacon and nice and crispy. Thank you, ma'am." Dan looked at Ezra and motioned toward the menu. "Do you know what you like, son? The meal is on me." Ezra perused the menu for a moment and was pleased to realize a lot of the food offered was similar to what he'd eaten in his time. However, there was plenty he was unfamiliar with, so he simply closed the menu and looked at the waitress. "I'll have the same as him, thank you." Once the waitress left, he refocused on the pill. "I've been working hard to create a way to give people abilities. Call it magic or scientific, that's up to you. I've infused this pill with a special additive that will give someone a temporary boost in strength, speed, and possibly more. What I need is a place to work out of, and a team to help me get it manufactured. I would like to eventually get into making advanced weapons and begin building a time travel device as well." Dan put his hand up and let out a slow snort. "Slow down, son. Why don't we start with the pill? This is something that could help the military create the first functional advanced super soldier. This is something that it's only been seen in movies. But now it might be a reality. If this pill works, we can talk logistics. For now, I need some proof. Do you have any?" The waitress came back to their table and set the food down. "Enjoy, gentlemen." Once she left, Ezra took a bite of his eggs and washed it down with a sip of coffee. His nose stiffened and he swallowed the beverage. He'd never had coffee before and decided he could go on without ever having it again. That's me too. Clearing his throat, he looked at the Admiral and spoke in a hushed voice. "Yes, my proof is this." He held out his palm, showing a small ball of green lightning. Then he grabbed the stone windowsill next to him and squeezed, leaving a dent in the material. "Is that proof enough?" Dan's mouth dropped open, causing the bacon to fall to the table. I'll be. Very well. Give me that pill bottle and I'll take it to my superiors. Reaching into his shirt pocket, he pulled out a business card and handed it over. Call me in 2 weeks and I'll have an answer for you. Ezra nodded and handed the pill bottle over. Very well, sir. I look forward to hopefully working together. He continued eating his meal with a smile on his face. A month passed for Ezra, and he'd wondered if he'd ever hear from the Admiral. He called a couple of times and got the same answer from the secretary. "You just need more time," she'd say. Ezra didn't buy it. Laying down on the bed, he let out a long sigh. What would he do if his plan didn't work? Should he try to find Zylok and secretly work with the old man behind Zalron's back? No, he couldn't take that chance. As he'd made his way to the sink, his phone rang. Excitedly, he picked it up. This is Ezra. Good afternoon, son. Admiral Stevens here. I've got good news for you. Ezra clenched his hand into a fist. It worked? Yes, it did, Admiral Dan said. It took about 15 minutes for the abilities to manifest, but once they did, it was a spectacular sight to witness. Ezra pressed the cell phone closer to his ear. Sweat poured from his brow simply out of excitement. I was afraid when I couldn't get a hold of you for a month that it didn't work. I'm glad to hear it was successful. Super. Hi, sir. What's next? I want you to come to my office. I've got a meeting scheduled with some building contractors. We've got a nice-sized piece of land in Stratton the military has been waiting to use. Then we'll talk with my staff and get the logistical stuff handled. We'll get all the financial mumbo-jumbo out of the way first, and then we're going to publish a newspaper article, get the word out about this exciting development. I have a feeling we're going to accomplish great things together, son. Ezra celebrated silently. As he finished up his conversation with Dan, he jotted down all the information on a piece of paper before hanging up. Blime. I did it. And that is the end of chapter 19. Perfect timing. Lurking while I join Rhino? Hey, no worries. We're just about to finish up, actually, and then I'll be in Discord reading Iron Flame. Okay, Fantasy Man. There's only one thing I have to mention. Something that doesn't quite click in my head. And maybe there's a reason. Why would the Admiral publish an article about a drug that's only just getting tested? Getting tested. And that I assume would be super top secret. That is my only question. Something to think about. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was a fun and thrilling 3 chapters. I'm very curious about where this is going to go, because people in the military higher-ups are cocky. Well, that's usually true, yeah. I can't wait to see where we end up in this story. I have no idea what's going to happen next, but I am quite curious. Quite curious indeed. All right. We're going to find someone to raid. I was in the Marines, so I wanted to make my own version of how they'd act. Okay. Yep. That's fair. That is fair. This is going to be a quick raid because I have to get ready to be in Discord. But don't forget, Sunday, we start at 6 p.m. Central, not 7. Even I have to remember this. I'm going to have to repeat it to myself over and over again. But since my friends over in the Plat Squad just went live, I think that's where we're going to go say hello to. It's going to be fun. All right, join me with this raid message if you can. Again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. I can't wait to keep going with this book and see how it goes. But until then, I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And have a fantastic night.